We have seen how to retrieve data using EF Core, but sometimes we might want to retrieve some data using views or stored procedure. How can we do that? Rather than creating the view and stored procedure directly in the database, I prefer to do that using migration. That way, when someone pushes the migration, everything will be deployed. To add a migration, we will go to Package Manager console and I will say add migration, add view and as proc. Now the migration that gets added will be an empty migration. We have the default project as web here. That is why we get this error message. Change that to be data access and run it once again. Perfect. It is an empty migration. I have said before that if we want to write SQL here, we can do that using migrationbuilder.sql. So let me go to the snippets. I do not want to waste time in writing the basic SQL script here. In section 10, let me copy the view and stored proc, paste it in the up method. Now I have create and drop. Drop, we will add that inside the down method. Let's take a look on what we are doing here. Inside migrationbuilder.sql, we have written SQL command, and that basically create or alter view, and we are giving that a name get main book details. Next we have get all book details, which will do select star, and finally we are creating a stored procedure with book ID as the parameter, and this will be book ID with the where statement. We are only retrieving that book detail. So we have one stored procedure and two views that we are adding. With that, let me update the database. We get an error here because I have the same name for stored procedure as well as view. So let me modify that and I will call that get book detail by ID. That should do the trick. Let me update. Whoops. I need to copy this and update in the drop statement. And let me update the database. Perfect. That is done. Now when we are working with stored procedure or view, that will be executed on a DB set. If we are retrieving all of the entries from book, we can use the book DB set that we have. But if you are working on a subset, we need to create a class that corresponds to this subset that we have. So basically there is one limitation with stored procs or views right now, that you basically need a corresponding DB set that will be the exact parameters or properties that are returned from the view or stored proc. If there is one thing less or one thing more, it will not work. So first we need to create that model here. I will call that as main book details, and it will be a public class that will have three properties: ISBN, title, and price. We can go to the book class here and copy three of them, paste it right here. Perfect. That looks good. Once we add this model class here, we need to add that to our DB set. So we go to data access, data application DB context. We need to create a DB set for the class main book detail. Now when we add something to the DB set, it will try to create a table in our database. We do not want that. We do not want to create a new table. We are only using that because that is the return type for our view. And on top of that, all of the DB set requires a primary key. That is also not the case with this DB set that we have. So first we need to say that this particular DB set does not have any key. We can do that using our model builder Fluent API. So model builder.entity, we are now talking about the main book detail, and that has no key. And then we do not want to create a table for this entity, so there is a method here which is toView. That basically tells EF Core that we do not have to create a table. There is a view with the particular name that needs to be mapped to the main book detail. Now what is the name of the view? We can go back to our table, views, let me refresh here, and we have the get main book detail. Copy that and paste it right here. This method is similar to the .toTable method that we saw earlier. But EF4 does not know how to create the view. So all it will do is it will ignore this model and it won't add anything to the database because we have added this .to view right here. One thing that is important about the has no key is that EF4 will never track this entity since it does not have a primary key. Because of that, anything you retrieve from the view will always be read-only. And if you explicitly try to set the tracking by using as tracking, it will simply ignore that. So with that, we have done quite a few things to configure views and how to retrieve data using a DB set that we have created. In the next video, let's take a look at the view that we added in action.